If sleep doesn't have a fundamental biological purpose, then it is the biggest evolutionary mistake that we've ever made.
I just need to sort out my sleep. I just need to get the sleep thing worked out, and then everything is going to be better. Because as we know, when you are not sleeping well, everything else gets a little bit harder.
Only a few of them are really menopause specific. Some of them are life transitions, some of them are aging, some of them are stress levels, because menopause is a period of time in a woman's life when there's not just biological changes going on, but there's a lot of life changes going on as well, where your nervous system needs to calm down. And if you've got any of those factors that are impacting your nervous system, you're not going to calm it enough in order to get into sleep, let alone get restful sleep. 40 to 60% of women who are going through perimenopause and menopause experience sleep disruption.
Today's guest is a return guest to Big Stuff podcast. We've got Dr. Michelle Olaithe, who was on for our narcissism episode, which I will link. But today we are talking about sleep. Now, Michelle has spent a career deep inside sleep labs and university research because she is obsessed with sleep. Now, I'm obsessed with sleeping, but she is obsessed with understanding what happens to the brain when sleep breaks down. And right now, she is really curious about the changes that occur during perimenopause and menopause for women and how that is impacting their sleep. So she is a clinical psychologist, an honorary research fellow with the University of Western Sydney, founder of the Sleep Psychologist, and one of the few specialists treating sleep and perimenopause as the same problem, not two separate ones. She is tired of women just being told to sleep better and work it out, and she is here today to help us to work it out.
Hi, I'm Danielle, and I'm so glad that you're here because together we're going to work through big stuff.
Michelle, hello and welcome back to Big Stuff.
Hi, Dan. Thanks so much for having me on again. This is, I'm very excited to talk about what we've decided to talk about today.
Yes, me too. It is such a huge subject, and I am a big fan of sleep. I love sleep. I'm obsessed with sleep. I protect it and nurture it and do everything I can. And you are a big fan of sleep also.
I am. Do you know, I actually have always been a big fan of sleep. So I always found sleep really fascinating as a kid. And then even before I went and did my PhD, I went off and was a sleep technologist, and which meant that I got to work in the evening and do all the observations and all the electroencephalogram and all that kind of stuff, and then decided to do my PhD in sleep as well. So I think I've always been fascinated by sleep.
That's amazing. Because sleep is something that a lot of people don't give a whole lot of thought to. It's something that happens or it doesn't happen. And when it doesn't happen, we all know about it. We all give a bit more thought to it then. But for the most part, people assume that sleep just kind of happens regularly and naturally. What are some of the things you go.
Oh, no, you're fine. I think that's so true, which is so interesting because I gave a whole bunch of talks a couple of weeks ago to people who were, at work. We were doing some EAP work on mental health at work. And we were talking about what you spend your life doing. And you spend a third of it at work, a third of it asleep, and a third of it doing all the other things that you find important. So the fact that we spend a third of our lives asleep, there's this old dude called, I can't even say his name, it's something German, Rechtenschaften or something like this. And I'll have to find
King
a spelling
German
for you.
name. That is a cracking German name.
And he said, if sleep doesn't have a fundamental biological purpose, then it is the biggest evolutionary mistake that we've ever made. And that was due to the amount of sleep, the time that we end up spending asleep.
Yeah. Well, I guess that comes again into that other discussion of how we should be spending our time, and if it's not productive, then it's a waste of time. So I think that Dr. Schwerschneider is totally wrong, because there is something so deeply wonderful about climbing into bed at the end of the day and just having that moment of, oh, here I go. Like, this is just for me. Nobody wants anything from me. And I'm like settling in to really like replenish and catch some Zeds. I just love it. One of the things that I've noticed with myself, however, I've always been a really good sleeper, and I've found, I mean, I'm now in menopause, but perimenopause really changed like my quality of sleep. And I also work with a number of women who are in a very similar age group to myself. And one thing that I keep hearing over and over again is, I just need to sort out my sleep. I just need to get the sleep thing worked out, and then everything is going to be better. Because as we know, when you are not sleeping well, everything else gets a little bit harder.
Yeah, so true. You are not amongst the minority, you are amongst the majority. So we know that when we're looking at symptoms, 40 to 60% of women who are going through perimenopause and menopause experience sleep disruption. When it comes down to like a diagnosable condition in sleep, it's only about 26%. But still, the fact that up to 60% of women experience disruption in sleep due to peri or menopause means there's a lot there. And in preparations for chatting today, I actually made a table. So I'll send it to you and you can attach it to wherever you need to attach it, because there are so many factors that can impact sleep, and only a few of them are really menopause specific. Some of them are life transitions, some of them are aging, some of them are stress levels, because menopause is a period of time in a woman's life when there's not just biological changes going on, but there's a lot of life changes going on as well. And so I thought, to do this justice, I really need to have a long list of things and what happens with sleep. And they all impact sleep, because sleep is a state that you need to get into. I love the way that you described it, where your nervous system needs to calm down. And if you've got any of those factors that are impacting your nervous system, you're not going to calm it enough in order to get into sleep, let alone get restful sleep.
I have found pretty much throughout my entire life, I feel like I'm only just starting to address it, or to see it as something that is addressable. I've found that my brain is often on like a slightly off the radio station, you know what I mean? So I'm sleeping, but there's still a channel on. I can still have I'm processing, I'm still aware of things going on in my brain when I'm sleeping. So it's almost like I haven't been able to fully fall into a good sleep pretty much my entire life. And now I understand, the way my brain works. I have ADHD. There's a whole lot of other stuff going on. And getting to the bottom of that and really supporting my nervous system to be able to switch off and turn off those radio stations has been really fantastic. I'm very curious. You said a moment ago about only 20% of the issues women are diagnosable. What would the diagnosis be of severe sleep deprivation, therefore we need to treat?
Yeah. Okay. So I think I don't love the medical model where something needs to be diagnosed to be treated. I think that anyone who's experiencing distress obviously needs support, and whether that meets a certain set of criteria that we've decided that can be enough for a diagnosis or not, I think is not really the most important factor. I think the most important factor is distress. So if someone's experiencing distress due to their sleep, then they need support. The diagnoses that can come in there are things like sleep apnea, insomnia, needing hormone replacement therapies, anxiety, depression. All of those things become more common during menopause, and that you can end up with diagnoses there. But that's about 26% of people. But there's
See, but
still
then
this,
sleep is a
yeah,
symptom. Like your lack of
yeah,
sleep is not the insomnia is not the diagnosis. Insomnia or sleep issues are a symptom of other things. In which case, it can be good to investigate
yes.
in case there is something sort of fundamentally happening. And I think, what would you say as a time to go and look at it? If you like, we all have a bad night here and there. Sometimes we might have a couple of bad nights because we're like, okay, something's going on. I've slept really badly. Maybe I'm going through a big life thing. I'm feeling very worried. At what point do you feel like it's something that you would need to investigate further?
Gosh, that's a good question. To be honest, I think that at any point in time, if you're curious, it's not just about leaving it until you get really distressed about it that you should go and investigate it. Sometimes it's better to start investigating it before you've even hit the distress state, because at that
100%.
point, you've got so much more resources at your disposal to start looking at things and investigating and going and finding a healthcare practitioner that actually aligns with your belief system and your values, and you feel listened to by them as well. If you leave it till the distress point, then you're kind of at the mercy of whatever you can get at that time. And because it's something that's so highly personal and so many factors are sort of interwoven in amongst it as well, if you're starting to get distressed, then that's a great time to start keeping even a sleep diary or a diary of yourself and looking at the different factors that are impacting what's going on for you as well. So I think don't leave it till you're distressed, although, of course, if you're distressed, that's definitely time to go and get support. But I think earlier the better.
Yeah, I agree. As you say, you've got way more resources to deal with it if you don't wait
Mm.
until you're completely sleep deprived and starting to fall apart at the seams.
Well, Danny, because that's so interesting. Often we talk about things like when we're going through peri or menopause, we sit here and we talk about things like progesterone and estrogen. We talk about, FHS, but we don't talk about testosterone. And
Mm.
testosterone in women is actually one of those things that declines due to aging, not due necessarily to menopause, but that is the hormone that has the biggest impact on our cognitive capacity. And so a lot of women will go and get hormone replacement therapy for estrogen, progesterone, but they won't get the testosterone. And a lot of GPs actually don't know about that. So you need a very special GP who knows a lot about menopause. So I'm sorry, I had to catch that because I think that's really interesting. And it was a conversation that a girlfriend and I were having a little while ago about the cognitive declines that a lot of people start to see as we get older as well. But it's the hormone that a lot of women don't think even is in their body. And it's testosterone. So it's so important.
Yeah, so I started testosterone therapy about maybe a year and a half ago. And for brain fog, for libido, for lean muscle
Mm-hmm.
mass, but for entire function really. My testosterone was indetectable when I did the test for it.
Wow.
And it is something that a lot of like I had a great doctor at the time, and she didn't suggest it when I was falling
Mm-hmm.
apart, and I really did like sort of fall apart at the seams at the beginning of my HRT journey.
Mm-hmm.
And it definitely helped, but maybe this is where I was going with that actually is
Mm-hmm.
HRT. Like there can be a belief that once you start on HRT, everything is normal, but I still have some issues with sleep. I might have some days where I go to bed and I can't sleep for hours just for no reason. I'm lying there, I'm comfy, everything is good, I don't have anything on my mind, I just cannot fall asleep. That might happen
Yes.
for a couple of nights in a month. Or I go to sleep fine, but I wake up and then I'm comfy, I'm not thinking anything in particular, but I cannot go back to sleep. And and that was really starting to bother me
Mm-hmm.
until I discovered L-theanine. So
Mm-hmm.
we will go to supplements in a moment, but let's talk about the role of hormones in sleep,
Mm.
the way that progesterone does help. And did I say that right? Progesterone? No, that sounds just really weird to my
No,
brain. Can you tell this
yeah,
is
no,
my first podcast back in like 6 weeks? I'm
it
like,
was
oh my God,
great.
like, words are weird. Words are
No, you
strange.
did
Can
a
I
great
still
job. Not
speak?
like I butchered that poor man's name, but you did a great job there.
So, yeah, what is the role of HRT or hormones in sleep? What is the role of hormones in sleep? And then is HRT a silver bullet?
That's great. Hormones play a huge part in sleep. And I just wanted to touch on one that I think a lot of people, we just touched on testosterone, but also you were talking about your difficulty falling asleep. Now, there is beginning research, so it's not very well researched at the moment, as a lot of women's health things aren't. But there, with increased aging and then during menopause, there's actually declines in melatonin. And melatonin is one of these chemicals that our body produces to help us fall asleep. And there's a little bit of research that maybe, that menopausal kind of process starts to slow our production of melatonin. And this seems to be one of the complaints of a lot of women, is the being able to fall asleep, but also the not being able to stay asleep. And so those are some of the symptoms that you often diagnose in insomnia, but it might not be insomnia due to stress, or it might be insomnia due to those hormone changes, but it could be insomnia due to stress. So this is where you've really got to become a bit of a detective and start to look at what are all these different things, do what you went and did and go and get your hormones tested, but then also keep a bit of a sleep diary and sort of look at the other factors like I'm getting older. Have I got lots of life changes? Are my kids getting older? What stage are my kids in? How's my relationship going? Also, things like your parents getting older too. This is just such a busy time of life with so many transitions. So there are so many things that then will impact your stress levels, which will then impact your sleep. And so it's really hard to pin down. And I think that's where you've really got to be a bit of an investigator into yourself and into what's going on for your life too. Now, I've completely derailed your question, which was about hormones.
Yes, the role that hormones play, and without falling asleep. So let's stick to melatonin for 1 second, because I've heard mixed things about melatonin. When my daughter was having trouble sleeping, her holistic therapist was like, no, don't use melatonin. And then she was like, yes, do use melatonin, but use it sparingly. And I know I was using melatonin for the days. So I had a rule that if I was still lying there an hour and a half after I had turned out the lights and said, okay, it's time, I would then take 3 milligrams of melatonin. And then when I talked to my ChatGPT boyfriend about it, he was like, no, you're doing it all wrong. You don't take it as a sleep aid when you already can't sleep. You just need 1 milligram, not 3 milligrams. So you need 1 milligram 2 hours before sleep time, because it sends the signals to your brain as opposed to something that helps you go to sleep. It sends the signal to your brain that it's time to go to sleep, as opposed to a sleep aid per se. What are your thoughts on melatonin?
Oh, I love this topic. So melatonin, I think a lot of people take it because they think it helps them get sleepy. But that is, as you have already kind of suggested, that's a misunderstanding. Melatonin is meant to help your body regulate into a rhythm. And the ideal sort of way that you take it is you take it at the same time every evening, about half an hour to a couple of hours before you want to fall asleep. And you take it at the same time in order to try to get your body to pick up a routine. Because routine for sleep is the most important thing that you could do. And so taking that melatonin for a month, 6 weeks, is meant to help your body get into a new routine. And so you're meant to take it religiously every evening until you've got a new routine. You don't need to take melatonin in order to build up a new routine, though. There's lots and lots of research that shows that the best way to build up a new sleep routine is just force yourself to have the same wake time every morning, even if you need an alarm. And what that does then is that releases the cortisol in the morning to then help your body clock reset. And then it will start releasing the melatonin evenly in the evening as well. So routine is the single most important thing that you can have for a good sleep. Sleep's really cool, actually. It's, if we're looking at all the brain waves that when we go to sleep, it's not this inactive state that a lot of people seem to think that we get into. It's a very, very active state where there's synaptic pruning that goes on, memories are laid down, information that you don't need anymore is kind of chopped away and chopped back up into more important things. You're opening up this area in your brain called the glymphatic system, which washes out all the metabolites from your brain. You are replenishing all of your body stores. If you have done lots of physical activity that day, it replenishes all your muscle stores and lays down all that muscle and repairs and builds, and does the same for your immune system. It's a very, very active and important state. And the best way to get good sleep, your brain kind of does this weird thing where it kind of wants to do like a build up. It goes through shallow sleep, and then it kind of hits this deep sleep state, which is important for that body repair. And then early in the morning, it comes back into a REM state along with some more deep sleep. And the REM state is that dreaming state. And that's important for that, what we think is the synaptic pruning and the laying down memories. And that's when we have the most active dreaming as well. So it needs that kind of solid chunk of sleep with a build up and routine and everything. And it's quality, not quantity of sleep. That's the most important thing as well.
What is an ideal amount of sleep that we should be getting? I mean, I love a solid 8. Like I will protect my 8 hours in bed, and I'd love to get 8 hours. But how do we go as an organism on 6?
So, look, the research is going to tell you that as an adult, you want between 7 and 9 hours of sleep. But really, if we look at it in a bit wider, 6 hours to 11 hours is a perfectly normal amount of sleep. So that variation is huge and it's highly individual. So I like that you said there, Dan, that, 8 hours is yours. You need the 8. So you've obviously looked at what you need. And everyone really essentially needs to keep a sleep diary and then have a bit of a look at what works for them, and the questions you want to ask yourself are not like, oh, did I wake up groggy? Because that's normal. Did I, have trouble getting to sleep the next night, or was it too easy for me to get to sleep? The questions you really want to ask yourself to know if you're getting enough sleep is, was my sleep latency going to sleep around about 20 to 30 minutes? Okay, that's good. Did I have enough energy during the day to be able to get the things done that I wanted to get done? And was I able to stay awake in situations like in relaxed situations, like just sitting on the couch or things like that? So it's actually really interesting. There's only a few things that you want to look at to see whether you're getting enough sleep.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because I feel that there is so much rhetoric around, it has to be X amount of hours for everyone. That's what we need. And anything other than that, your capacity to think fast or do other things will really decline. Whereas it can change and fluctuate even, day to day, week to week, how much you need or how well you can function on more or less. What are some of the issues that people or women in this time of life come to you with, and how do you address them?
I think, look, and it's a really good question. I just wanted to add one more thing on as well. I think that the social rhetorics that we end up prescribing to, like I must have 8 hours of sleep, or I must do this, or I must do that. I think sometimes we really need to look at them and go, but where did I get that rule from? Where was that information made in my brain? And then go and investigate it. If it doesn't work personally for you, it's probably just a social rule. And you need to find out what works for you. I mean, a lot of our social rules are based off historical things that don't really work in today's society, or they're based off a majority percentage of this works for the majority, but you're not the majority, you're one person. So while you could start investigating in that majority rule, like I must get 7 to 9 hours sleep, really you need to then take that rule and individualize it. So I think be careful what social rules you are prescribing to and really investigate them.
The 8 hours, I feel like I heard recently that the 8 hours thing was an ad campaign for a mattress company back in the 70s or something like that, 60s. And that's how this 8 hours thing, there's like 10,000 steps. It was an advertising campaign, which then became like sort of this part of a social norm. I know for me personally that when I have quality sleep, I am much more able to keep my emotional load. I'm much more like I do start to get wobbly and cranky and moody and whatever if I have interrupted sleep from if I have like under 8 hours sleep or under 7, certainly multiple days in a row, I feel that cumulative effect and I start to feel very wobbly. But I know that, then we have people who say, hey, I operate perfectly well on 6 hours sleep every day and that's all I need.
Exactly. No, I haven't heard the mattress thing, but that's really interesting. And it doesn't surprise me because even the whole BMI concept, so body mass index, that's like a whole concept based off like a small sample of white males, and then they've kind of applied it to everyone else. So again, it's these things that we've they're handy because there's simple rules to follow, but you really need to personalize everything for you. I'm a long sleeper, so I really like 9 hours, but I also have to behave myself because I'm a bit of a total tramp for sleep. I love it. So I would just do it for hours more.
You're about to say sleep slut.
Oh, I was going in there, Dan. I was like, oh, come on, we'll be a bit professional, but yes. I love it. Yeah. So you're
So will you be able to like snooze in the morning and just like get an extra like hour, 2 hours in the morning?
Yeah, definitely. So my body will wake me up in the morning, sort of around 5:36. And because I do like to go for a run in the morning, and when I'm behaving myself, I'll get up and I'll go for a run and get a couple of hours to myself before the house wakes up. So I do try to do that, but I kind of get this option in the morning and like I can kind of just doze, but also I can nap in the afternoon really easy and everything as well. I've always been a very sleepy person and I find I can access sleep really, really easy. But I think I'm a bit obsessed with it, to be honest.
Well, you're a champion sleeper. That's amazing. So with the clients that I have seen in this time of life who are saying like, I really need to sort my sleep out. Some of them are on HRT. Some of them, not all of them, have good routine and exercise. All of them have high stress loads. But when they're saying they need to sort their sleep out, what they're finding is like night after night of disrupted sleep, inability to sleep, in spite of having the routine. They probably, I can't tell you about the supplements that they're taking, but, they are definitely on HRT. But, they might think that they've done everything and tried everything and this is just the way that it is. Is it just the way that it is at this time? So, various different things happen. So we have like, there's the hot flushes, there's itchy feet or hot feet, there's just wakefulness, there's, all sorts of different sort of biological things happening. Like, is it just the way that it is or can we sort it?
It's a good question. And it's going to come back to individuals and individual sort of answers for everyone. So there's lots and lots of research out there that shows that HRT is going to do a lot for a lot of people. There's also research out there that shows that melatonin is going to do something for a lot of people. CBTI, which is cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, is going to do a lot for a lot of people. Antidepressants. So you can see here there's all these like different types of answers for different people depending on the symptoms. And so that's where that investigation really needs to happen. And you need to pinpoint, but what is it that's impacting people? So when I'm chatting with people, I'm getting women coming to me, and sometimes it's all the things that you reflected on. And then it's also things like my hormones, not my hormones. Well, I do say hormones, but my moods are just all over the shop. I feel like a teenager all over again. I have no control over this. So sometimes it's that kind of stuff too. So it's really what's the person presenting with, and then what's the easiest stuff that we could start with? Like, is there low level stuff? Like, can we make a routine? Could we get some exercise in? Could we trial melatonin? Could we trial hormone replacement therapy? Is it about moods, or is it about, sometimes I see this a lot too. It's about they've hit this stage of life and their hormones are all over the shop, but their relationships are not supporting them in the ways that they have needed, and they just don't have the tolerance for it anymore. So there's a lot of boundaries work that seems to happen, because I'm a psychologist. So there's a lot of boundaries work that happens in this phase of life too. So it's really about looking at that whole picture of the person, trusting that their body is doing something that's intelligent, and then figuring out what's the bit here that we need to sort of help support you around. That really
It's
doesn't
interesting
help
you say
answer.
that. No, it does. It definitely does. It's all, more information and more understanding, and I guess sort of more compassion for each person individually. It's interesting that you say that, because Asaya McKimmey, the sexologist, she is on an episode either just before this one or just after this one, haven't decided yet. But she's talking about the biggest issues with libido, even at this time of life, is not necessarily because of the biological stuff, but because of the emotional stuff that is going on, as well as we go through this huge transformation in our lives, this huge transition, and how that changes the dynamic in our relationship. One thing that has been very interesting in my own relationship at this time of life, which is quite surprising to me, is my sensitivity to my husband's sounds in bed. So he's not particularly a snorer. He does like a little kind of breathing snuffle, and it is so freaking annoying to me right now. Like, and for the last 12 years of our lives, it hasn't been a problem. And all of a sudden I'm hyper fixated on any breathing that he does. Like, it's like, dude, you have to stop breathing. And he's like, I'm trying to breathe really quietly. But the second he gets like really like poochy, you're just be, when I stop it, like, you've just puffed, don't puff. I'm finding brown noise rather than white noise. Brown noise is very helpful to cover any noises. But it's really interesting that hasn't bothered me previously, and now I'm hyper fixated on it. So it goes to show that, and that's not a menopause symptom per se. It's although changes in hearing and sensitivity of hearing is definitely a sign and a symptom.
So Danielle, I find it really interesting, because I talk to a lot of women who are neurodivergent as well. And this period of time in their lives, when they've got perimenopause or they're going through menopause, if they've been able to mask the entire time up until now, they stop being able to mask. I don't know whether they stop being able to, or they stop caring, or the load is too high. But this is also, so that's the time this seems to come out a lot more. And then also the other thing that seems to come out a lot more is, things like food sensitivities and gut issues. And so I think it's just this almost like this buffer of youth that now can't buffer anymore. And this is just kind of something that I've been stewing away on, that I haven't looked into. But my sense is that all of these things are kind of relating to probably more inflammation, that, your body can't buffer against it anymore. So your gut issues start to come out. Your body can't buffer against that. It's this aging process that happens, or, these drops in estrogen, where estrogen is very much a buffer against a lot of these kinds of problems. it's not able to buffer anymore. Now, I'm not sure. I'm going to have to do a lot more reading into that. But it just seems to be this period of time where women could buffer these things, and now they just can't or don't want to, but also shouldn't as well. So there's this really awesome woman, and I'm going to have to find her, but she writes a book about this period of time in her perimenopause or her menopause where it was the coming of the hag. And the hag for her was this wonderful burning, and and that was what the hot flushes were, and this burning away of her old personality and the things that she didn't need anymore, to let this inner rage come out and be the person that she was always meant to be, and have opinions and set boundaries and not keep masking. And I kind of love that romantic view of this period of time too. And I think it also gives a lot more meaning to some of the horrible ups and downs that go on too.
Feel it though. I really feel that, whether it is an inability to keep wearing the masks or a zero fucks to continue doing it. Like, I'm not too sure, but it seems like it is inevitable. Like it's something that cannot be fought against, and nor should it be, as you say. But it does have this sort of sense of inevitability that you come into this place of, I mean, they do say, you know, I'm entering my zero fucks era, but I don't think it is that. It's like just being really, really mindful where I put my fucks and what I will and won't put up with anymore. And it is both frightening and liberating at the same time, because I think we get so used to being palatable, like ensuring that we are, you know, smooth around the edges for everyone. And now it's just like, you know what? I'm done with that. Stop breathing while you're sleeping and go. And it's your turn to cook dinner.
Yes. And so, you know, I think some of these changes, however kind of distressing they can be on our body, that like difficulty with sleeping and things, you know, I think as well there is this period of time where I like that it makes you go, I don't have as many resources to just spread them amongst everyone else. I'm going to have to keep some for me. So I'm going to think about where I spread my fucks. I love that, actually. Yeah.
Yes. Well, we all need to get some t-shirts. So let's talk supplements. We've mentioned melatonin. I know when I first started my HRT, I was taking my progesterone in the morning. I was rubbing my stuff, estrogen and the estrogel, and then I was taking my progesterone at the same time because I didn't want to forget it. And my doctor was like, no, take it at night. It will help you to sleep. It didn't particularly, but then I've sort of started layering in. So I've got like my magnesium glycinate, and then most recently started L-theanine, which I think might just be a miracle.
That's fantastic to hear. It's a lot of people are getting into the L-theanine. I mean, melatonin, of course, there's the over-the-counter stuff that you can get, but then there's also doctor prescribed. And so that doctor prescribed, I think, you know, if you're going to be starting to do your full investigation, maybe you want to be going and chatting with your GP about that.
So melatonin's an interesting one because there's some research that suggests, so there's a really awesome guy out there called Till Ronenberg, and he's done tons and tons of research into this and sleep cycles. And he suggests that perhaps melatonin isn't actually about falling asleep, but it's actually more about breeding cycles, because it builds up during that dark period in a lot of animals over winter, which then suggests that as it gets to a high point, you're supposed to be breeding. So that's an interesting kind of area of research as well, is that.
Yes, and if you're going through perimenopause, be very careful that you don't go into another breeding cycle, because you don't want to whoops a baby at 49. I mean, maybe you do, but I don't.
No, look, if you want the baby at 49, great. But if you don't want the baby and it's a whoops a baby, yeah, no, that's not what anyone wants. But then there's lots of supplements. So, you know, you tapped as well into magnesium glycinate, which is one of those ones that's really important to help you relax and get to sleep and get that muscle relaxation going on. And then you also tapped into L-theanine, and all of these what are they called again? What's that
neurotransmitter?
It's something else.
I was actually trying to think of this before we got on. I meant to Google what it is. But yeah, it's like it's anyway.
They alter
charades.
They alter your kind of the way that your brain is functioning and the level of activity. And there's quite a few of them out there, and people have become quite fascinated with them. And some people have started putting them in, like, when you get those alcohols that aren't alcohols.
Nootropic?
Nootropic.
Nootropic.
You've got it.
Yeah.
Nootropics.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
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 Well, look, it's, as I said, I'm starting L-theanine probably 4 weeks now.
Mm-hmm.
And it has greatly changed my quality of sleep. That constant sort of radio station that I said, I feel like it's definitely going quiet. I feel like I'm able to go deeper and stay there. Like, I feel like it has really, really, really changed the game for me. And it was recommended to me actually by a pharmacist when I said, I wonder if it has something to do with my dexamphetamine ADHD meds. But I mean, the radio station has been an issue my entire life. I've only been on meds for like 2 years. But she said that L-theanine really helps with that sort of any leftover lag from any amphetamines or whatever. So it's definitely something worth investigating or trialing if these are issues that you have as well. I think as you've said before, it's really about, there is no silver bullet and there is no one size fits all, but setting yourself up for success with a great sleep routine, same time every day, exercise, don't eat sugar and stuff before bed. Or make sure your digestive system is given a break before bed. Don't eat too close to bed. All of these things, these cumulative things that add up to sleep success.
I was just thinking about it, right? So I think there's a lot of, I think you're right in kind of trialing these things and finding things that work. And I think there's lots of really awesome supplements and, hormone replacement and everything. And if that's the answer, then that's great. But I think also tapping into what we were talking about before, where sometimes these things that we're experiencing that we find unpleasant are almost necessary unpleasantnesses that we need to sit in for a little while sometimes before we just try to get rid of them, because they can sometimes indicate hormone imbalances and things that you can't really psychologize your way out of. But sometimes they're indicators that there are things going on psychologically or interpersonally that you need to be working through. And I think that's kind of sometimes what I see a lot of. And sometimes the idea of like me trying to encourage people to sit in the discomfort for a little bit longer than they might want to is hard. But that discomfort is so important. It really indicates, like, if you're laying there at nighttime and you're thinking, oh, I wish my husband wouldn't do this, or my partner wouldn't do that, or I wish this, or I wish that, then it's kind of indicating that there's things that are going on that you're maybe not setting boundaries about or having discussions about that are going to be uncomfortable discussions, but maybe are important to being able to create a life and relationships that you want to be inside of more. Because ultimately it's just suggesting that there are areas of stress that you need to be doing something about. And maybe those areas of stress are hormone imbalances, but maybe those areas of stress are neurodivergence, or maybe they're relationship difficulties. So I really encourage people to sit in the discomfort and dig in it a little bit sometimes.
Gross. Can't I just take a sleeping pill? No.
Exactly. Yes, it is awful. It is awful, but so important. So
that is a very, very interesting point and poignant point, I think, because we do often in various areas of our lives just go on to want to fix the symptoms immediately, fix the discomfort, rather than really investigating the source of the discomfort and what is going on. And as we've said, it is such a huge time of life when lots of different things start floating up to the surface. Interestingly, the other things that float up to the surface in this time, which is fascinating to me and such a, I mean, it sucks, but it's important. Childhood shit, like stuff that I have been okay with my entire life, or okay with, right? If you're just listening, I just did some like air quotes. I have, not especially had a problem with, are suddenly coming to the fore at this time of life. And it's something that I am in therapy with, or talking through in couples therapy. And I'm like, I have no idea why this is coming up now, why this childhood stuff has not reared its head before, but here it is. Let's deal with it, as uncomfy as it can be. Like menopause. Hey, what a fantastic game show that the whole family can play, right? As a psychologist, I guess you see that as well. Like, what is up with that?
Yeah, it is. Do you know what it is? I mean, I think this becomes a time of life where, there's a lot of physical changes going on, but there's also a lot of relationship changes. Like, your kids are not little anymore. Your partnerships are often not new anymore. They're older friendships, or, an older relationship, they're things like that. So there's just more space for you. Your whole life has been about other people. And so it's always like, maybe if these things bubbled to the surface, you were never able to really dig into them. And now they don't need you as much anymore. The kids they're not asking for things constantly. If they are asking for things, it's like, hey, take me for my driving lessons. So, you've got more time to contemplate yourself. And so I think that's what it is. And I love hearing you say that you are spending that time to contemplate yourself, because this is that period of time where if you really grab it, you get to go, well, what has my life been about? And now what I want it to be about. And I think that if you spend that time sitting in the discomfort and having that time for consideration, you now get the next 20, 30 years to fill in all those things that you wanted to be and do all those things that you wanted to do. So I think that discomfort can sometimes create a lot more life satisfaction if you can sit in it.
I agree. And we've seen it time and time again throughout our lives previously. So it makes sense that this is just another big, fat, juicy one right now. Talk to me about alcohol. Alcohol during perimenopause is something that I became very sensitive to. I created, interesting, maybe I did create an allergy to sulfites. And have just slowly, it's something that I have just let go. And I'm pretty grateful, actually, that I've been able to do that. But I do know a lot of people still use alcohol as something to help them to relax, and they may even suggest that it helps them to sleep. What are your thoughts on that?
Look, I think alcohol, particularly in an Australian group, an Australian cohort, alcohol is very normalized. It's very social. It's, our weekly quotas of healthy alcohol consumption are quite high, really. And so I think it's just very normal. And however, alcohol is actually really crap for your sleep. So we know it will help you get to sleep, but it also increases your cortisol levels. So you're more likely to have more broken sleep during the night as well. And, alcohol as well, if you're starting to use that as your crutch to fall asleep, then, maybe it indicates that you need something to help you relax, but maybe you need to be experimenting with other things. So then when you end up like yourself, Danielle, that you're like, it now doesn't react well with my body, you're having to find something else. So I think it's not great for sleep. I think it's very normal for a lot of people to use it that way. But yeah, it's not fantastic. And then also it has such run-on effects. So alcohol, it dehydrates you, it puts your body under more stress. And as we were sort of talking about before, I do think, with that reduction in estrogen, which is such a protective factor, like pre-menopause, women have, a much lower risk of heart disease and cardiovascular issues, much lower risk of things like sleep apnea, which men have throughout their whole life, but we don't get that because of that estrogen. So I think as that then starts to decline, we become much more sensitive to a whole bunch of things that will increase our body's general inflammation levels. And so if you're going to alcohol increase your body's inflammation levels, stress increases your inflammation levels, mood disorders increase your inflammation levels. So we now have that much lower level of estrogen, which is protective. And if you then go and start to consume things that will increase your inflammation levels, like alcohol, you're just adding to the stress that your body's under and not really getting to the underlying causes of, well, how do I support my body to continue in good health?
Good health is really what we all need to be, focused on, and whatever it is, whatever that means for each individual person, I think that's a beautiful note sort of for us to wrap up on is knowing that good health is a spectrum, and we can all just be doing our best to stay on the spectrum of where we're at, because it can feel like another responsibility to fit in the macros, to do the exercise, to make sure that everyone else in our house is doing well, to ensure that we're doing all of the different things that spark good health. And it can often feel like it's just all overwhelming and another responsibility at this time of life. So I love that you said a number of times that this isn't a one-size-fits-all issue with sleep, and that everyone needs to be sort of doing their own investigative work into what works for them and how to ensure that they're doing okay. Okay.
I really like that, Dan. The perfectionism or perfect is not a real thing. And if someone is aiming to get to perfect in anything, in health, in sleep, in relationships, then you're just adding more stress into that. And so I think it's about investigating individually what works for me and what's not working and how could I change that. But then also knowing that life is bumpy as hell and it's okay, and your body will cope with it and your relationships will cope with it. And, and if they don't, then that's when there are lots of supports out there to go and get as well. And it needs to be an imperfect ride.
Yeah, well, amen to imperfect rides. Thank you so much. May we all get quality sleep. And I've loved this chat. Thank you so much for coming on again, Michelle.
Thank you so much for having me on again. And I'll send you this table I've made of the hormones and the impact on sleep. And I'll send you a sleep diary so people can start investigating their own sleep as well. Send you those things.
Awesome. Okay. Now I will put all of the links on how to find you in the show notes. So if anyone does have any further questions about sleep, do reach out, because Michelle's an expert. Not only is she a champion sleeper, but she's done a lot of research into the field of sleep and is one of her favorite subjects. Thanks so much.
My pleasure. Yeah. Thank you so much.
We are often led to believe that sleep is a discipline problem. And while Michelle did talk about the importance of routine, it is so much deeper than just doing it better. It is not just about going to bed earlier, putting the phone down and drinking less wine. Those things help, okay? But for a lot of us in this stage of life, it is so much more than that. It's what's going on in our lives, what's going on in our biology And really getting to the bottom of each different aspect of that is going to be paramount to you catching quality Zs. So go and find the right person. Go and ask the questions and don't stop until you are able to get a good night's sleep. I want to leave you with 2 thinking points here. And that is, if sleep has changed for you in the last few years, what have you been blaming yourself for, which might actually be just hormones? Or what is environmental and not just you not being able to unwind? And Michelle said that discomfort is often the point, that sitting in it rather than rushing to fix it is sometimes where the real answer is. Now, I did tell her that sucks. However, she has a point. So what is going on in your life right now that maybe you are trying to fix before you've actually understood it? As ever, if this podcast could help someone you know, please share it. If you want to reach out, we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, rest well. I hope that you enjoyed listening to this episode of Big Stuff as much as I enjoyed recording it for you. Now, if you did enjoy this episode, it would really help me if you wanted to share it with just one person that you think is going to get something out of it. And also feel free to drop a comment. All of these things really help podcasts to gain more ears, and that's what we're really here for. Also, be sure to subscribe, then you will never miss an episode. If you want to find out more about me, who I am, what I do, then you can go and check me out at daniellecolley.com.au. I'll see you next episode for more big stuff.